Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my podcast. Appreciate you being here with us this week. We were coming off of a little hiatus. I've been absent for the past couple of weeks. There's been no new podcast out the past couple of weeks, and that is for good reason. So I added another dog to my family. We got a new dog. His name's Grady. He is a rescue from Bridge to Home Animal Rescue, and he has been taking up the majority of my and my wife's free time these last couple weeks. So chose to take off a couple weeks to kind of get him settled in, build a routine for him, and try to just get that under some sort of consistent way of managing having another dog. It's going well, very well. He's sweet. He's a great dog. Excited for the future with him. But that's really where I've been the last couple weeks, but I'm happy to be back. We're back with another great guest this week, and before we get to that, let's talk about a little business. There's a little business to attend to. First and foremost, if you guys are new here, if you're new listeners to the podcast, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here as usual. Each and every week I sit down with interesting people to talk to them about what they do and how they got to their point in their lives. We've talked to all sorts of different people in the last 7.5 years of me doing this podcast. If you're new, there's over 300 episodes of all sorts of different people from all different walks of life. Basically, talking about how they got from point A to point B, how they got to where they are today. If you are new, I'm telling you for the simple fact that we have a phone book full of names of interesting episodes for you to go back to and listen to. It's pretty good, if I say so myself. I'm a little biased, but it's pretty damn good. 300 episodes, 8 years almost, and still having a great time. Please, if you're listening right now and you have not yet, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if you can. I feel like I don't really bring that up enough, that is a good way to support the show, just by simply, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, you could click subscribe on there. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, which is, obviously on YouTube, you could search all these, I'll Call You Right Back, but hit subscribe on my YouTube channel. You could catch these video episodes, and if you would like, please leave a couple of kind words in the comments. Help feed that algorithm boost by commenting on an episode or hitting like on the video, and that's a big help for me. That'll do me some justice. If you want to go one step further and you want to support the show that you're listening to right now, if you want to support I'll Call You Right Back podcast, there's a couple of ways to do that. I have a lot of merchandise that you could find on my website, I'llCallYouRightBack.com. I have a Patreon you could subscribe to that's, $5 a month, where $5 will go out of your bank account, and that'll get thrown into my coin pouch for, a thank you for making these episodes each and every week. If you are a business owner, if you are someone who creates events, if you are someone who hosts events or put on shows or anything like that, I'll Call You Right Back is a unique opportunity to advertise your business in a unique way. Over these years, I've talked to so many different people, which brings me a listener base that is vast. Like I said, there's everyone from chefs, entrepreneurs, funeral directors, artists, musicians, park rangers, all these different peoples. And with all the different guests that I have on here, it brings different listeners to the podcast. And the podcast is, growing at an exponential rate. I'm very proud of the numbers of the podcast. And this is a unique opportunity for any business owner or creative or anyone that wants to advertise what they're doing by, doing it on the podcast. So in these intros, you could do some ad reads with the podcast. There's multiple ways that you could work with me through the podcast to amplify your business to a new listener base and a new audience. So if you're interested, you can go to I'llCallYouRightBack.com. I have a services tab. You could click on there and it'll tell you a little bit about the advertising, which is basically, during these intros, we'll talk about what your focus is, what you want to put on, what you're advertising, the information that you would like people to learn about, and how I could be of service to you. Last thing before we get to the guest, I've been doing this podcast for a long time, and I've been very fortunate to gain a lot of listeners, a lot of people that enjoy listening to the show, and most importantly, I've gained a lot of people that have inquired to be guests on the show, and the wait list to become a guest on I'll Call You Right Back podcast is very long. Fortunately, I feel very thankful that people want to be part of what I'm doing down here in my basement with I'll Call You Right Back podcast. So there's also another way to get involved with the podcast if you're interested in being a guest. So how you can go to Kennywood and you can get a skip to the front of the line pass, right? You could do that with the podcast. Like I said, the wait list is pretty long. So if you want to just skip in front of all these people that I have, queued up, and you just want priority, and you just want to get on the podcast and you can't wait and you just want to do it, there is a skip to the front of the line package. And basically what that is you pay a service and I will get you in immediately. I'll get you in. I will do a whole video episode with you. I'll cut out some reels. We will talk about your life. We will talk about your business. We will talk about anything you want to talk about on this podcast. And that is an opportunity for you guys if that is what you are looking for. Again, I'll call you right back.com. Click the services tab on there. You could find more information on everything as far as sponsoring the podcast, as far as jumping on an episode, and such. And that's about it for me, pimping out what I'm doing down here. It takes a lot for me to, it's the worst part of my job to harp on those types of things, just because I just want to do the podcast. I just want to talk to people and put it out there. But realistically, I'd like to be able to keep this thing going and try to generate some funds with it. This is all a passion project for me. So there's a couple of ways that you could support that, and that's through merchandise, that's through advertising your business, and that's through the jump the line packages. So the reason that everyone is here this week, now we're going to get to the real important stuff. So this week I sit down with a fantastic guest. Patrick Quinn is the director of Center for Metal Arts in Johnstown, PA. I've talked about it, I think, on the last couple of weeks, but I had an opportunity to go to the Center for Metal Arts in Johnstown, PA, to participate in a weekend forging workshop where I got to make a pretty incredible knife out of a piece of bar stock and a piece of angle iron. If you're looking on YouTube right now, you could see the knife. I'm holding it up right now. But I had an opportunity to meet Patrick through Dan Rue of Commonwealth Press. So Dan makes some pretty cool coins that he sells through Commonwealth Press website, and I was inquiring to Dan about where they came from, and he told me, hey, there's this guy up in Johnstown. He runs this incredible forging school, and you should really look into doing an episode with them. So that's exactly what I did. I went to their website, Center for Metal Arts, and I looked into what they are doing up in Johnstown, and it is fascinating. So basically what Center for Metal Arts is a place that is held in old Johnstown, and it is a forging school where you could go and you could participate in forging classes and workshops that range from all different levels of whether you're a beginner, whether you're advanced, anything like that. It's a forging workshop that helps spread the creativity and help spread the investment into the art and the trade of forging. You could go up there to their website and you could, check out the classes and the workshops that they are doing. Pat has been involved for a numerous amount of years, but I reached out to Pat. I was like, I pretty much, presented what the podcast is. I said I would love to come and check out the place, and then I would love to have you on and talk to you about what you're doing. And he was more than happy to come on the podcast, but one better, he invited me up to go participate in a workshop that lasted over the weekend. So you go up there and they're in this historic building. They got these historic power hammers that are from, that are hundreds of years old. And Pat and his small team up there really run an incredible operation where, like I said, you could take all sorts of different classes up there. I myself personally have never had any sort of forging experience at all. So I got to participate in a beginner's forging workshop workshop that lasted over the weekend. And like I said, we made a knife. But if you are someone who does any sort of metalwork or forging work, they do advanced classes and workshops that last up to 6 weeks. So you could really hone in on your craft and really learn as much as you want through the Center for Metal Arts. It is a 501c nonprofit organization up there, and they are doing incredible things. And Pat, he's been there for many years, and he is really someone who has kind of flipped the script on what Center for Metal Arts was. So originally it was a for-profit business that worked for, they did railings, they did fireplace work, they did handrails, they did fabrications, but it was, a place where you could go and they would do architectural work. People would hire them to do stuff. And Pat is someone who always had an interest in teaching, who wanted to make Center for Metal Arts more of a school rather than a business, which, I guess you could argue to say that it's both now still, but now he is really, they're not really doing outside sales work, they're doing these classes, and it's incredible stuff. Pat has a fantastic background. He is an artist, and it's kind of amazing how he fell into the world of blacksmithing, and it was just a really great conversation. He traveled down from Johnstown, and we sat down here, and me and him talked, and then I took him to Bedamo's for a wonderful slice of pizza, which is, that's where I kind of push everyone onto Bedamo's. He listened to the episode, and he was like, yo, I want to go here. So we went there, had a great slice, and we had a great day and a great conversation, and I'm excited to put it out, and I'm excited to let yous listen to it. I cannot urge yous enough that if you have any sort of interest whatsoever in experiencing any sort of forging or doing any sort of things like that, check out the Center for Metal Arts website, check out the classes that they have coming up, and I could tell you right now, I had no experience in it, and it was the most, I was nervous to go up there, but it was a wonderful experience. It was approachable, it was welcoming. Jeff Fader, who is an accomplished knife maker, was the one who ran my weekend workshop up there, and that's another cool thing about the Center for Metal Arts. They bring in these artists from all over the world to teach these classes that specialize in just like all this different creativity of all these different creative people and these creative minds, and it's all a culmination together, and Pat is the main man that makes this happen. So I hope you enjoy the episode. It was a fantastic time. He is a great guy, and I cannot be more supportive of what they are doing for the Center for Metal Arts up in Johnstown, PA. They are currently doing a fundraiser to rehab one of the historical power hammers in Johnstown. You could find more information on their website, Center for Metal Arts, but this is a fundraiser that is a matching fundraiser where an organization will match a $50,000 donation. So if he is able to raise $50,000 to put into the rehabilitation of this power hammer in Johnstown, this organization will write them a check for $50,000 to match the fundraiser that he is working on right now. So that will go a long way for a place like this, and it's pretty great. So without further ado, episode 303 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Patrick Quinn of Center for Metal Arts.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back. I'll be right back.
Telephone.
Yeah, you're good. Toss some headphones on.
Sure.
And get into the whole vibe of it all.
Oh yeah, listen to you.
Gets I don't know. Some people don't want to wear headphones, but does that sound all right?
Yeah,
Volume good?
Really good. Oh, I can hear myself too in the mic.
Yeah, it brings you in. That way you could kind of tell if you like pull away, it kind of fades away and stuff like that. It's a little bit better to help people keep up on the mic. But I'm excited about this. I'm very, very excited to get you in here. I think it was such a valuable thing that you had me come up to see what you were doing up there.
Yeah, me too.
Very, very cool. So, I mean, usually, I don't really have like a formal like start off. I kind of just roll into the episode. So it's very casual. You ever do a podcast?
Yeah, with Jeff.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Full blast.
Yeah.
Okay, so what have you guys like? What was like last weekend? Were you guys? I saw you were doing the sculpting classes.
Yeah, I just finished a collaborative sculpture class with a heavy mathematical component, and then we had a woodworking, timber framing, chisel class that just finished up. So we've been pretty busy.
Yeah. And this is is this the busy season? You said it was just starting.
It's just starting. Yeah. So I think next week there's no class, and it's sort of my last week to really prepare for the entire workshop season, I guess, and then starting the following Monday, our really long-term programs start up. So
yeah, those are like the multiple week programs.
Yeah, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Johnstown Center for Metal Arts.
Yeah.
You are what's your title there?
Executive director.
Executive director of Johnstown Metal Arts.
Yeah.
Now I don't often get the opportunity to go and like meet with the people that are going to be guests, so it's cool because I kind of feel like I know you a little bit more than I know most of my guests. But so how long have you been involved there?
In Johnstown, this is our 8th year, but I ran the school for 3 years in New York State before relocation.
Yeah. And I mean, overall, when did the center start?
Well, it started a little bit before I got there in New York, where they taught like a couple classes a year, but mainly it was an architectural iron shop. And so then I got there probably in 2014 or 2015 and really worked really hard to make it more of a full-time school and less of a part-time school. And so worked hard to like phase out architectural commission work and ramp up educational curriculum.
Yeah. Because the center, I mean, originally wasn't necessarily a school-based program, right?
Right. Like it was in New York, it was two separate businesses in one location. It was called Fine Architectural Metalsmiths, and that was like a for-profit LLC commission ironwork business making gates and handrails and fireplace work and stuff like that. And the Center for Metal Arts was like a separate sort of thing that ran like a couple classes a year. And so it kind of, juggled between those two, but it was like 90% architectural work, 10% education. And I've always wanted to be a teacher, so I took the job as shop manager over there after I graduated from grad school, and because I saw the potential for an educational sort of program. And then during my time there, I worked on, flipping the table really from architectural to educational.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So I want to rewind a little bit before, you get involved with the center, because I'm fascinated with how someone ends up, going down the path of becoming a blacksmith.
Yeah.
So where'd you grow up?
Hartford, Connecticut, or right outside of Hartford, Connecticut.
And, what was like, was blacksmithing ever on the radar for you?
No, not at all. I was always artistic, but it was always like drawing and painting, never sculpture.
Yeah.
So
from a young age, like that's what you were into?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was also into sports. I grew up playing hockey and stuff like that, but always took a shine to art, and my parents were always really supportive of that as well, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did they do?
Well, my mom was a pharmacy technician, and my dad worked for the Department of Transportation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was like art in your family?
Not really, to be quite honest. I don't think that my family has like a lack of creativity, but they didn't really have lifestyles that were able to sort of like support that, or something like that. So
yeah, it's usually a passion project whenever you're involved with the arts.
Yeah, and it was for my parents, raising a family and stuff like that was really important. I have an older brother, and we all went to private high schools and then college and stuff like that. So that was sort of what their focus was.
Yeah. Now, through high school, I mean, what is your idea that you wanted to pursue as a career?
Well, the high school I went to was an all-boys boarding school in Connecticut, and it has the best high school hockey program in the country.
What's that called?
Avon Old Farms.
Avon Old Farms.
Yeah.
Now, kind of talk me through, like, why was that the move for you? Like why did you guys end up going to an all boys boarding school?
Well, my brother went to a prep school nearby Avon, and that was co-ed, and he went there for the sports program as well for hockey. But obviously looking up to your older brother and stuff like that, it seemed like a really cool thing. It was like a mini college, honestly. You just lived in dorm with your buddies, and you went to school every day, but it was like not living at home for high school, and that was pretty attractive for me as well.
Were these big schools?
No, there was like 350 people.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So they're pretty small, but the campuses were really big. It literally was like a mini college campus. Dining hall, dormitories, classrooms, sports facilities, things like that. So, I really went to visit him a lot, when he was at one of those schools. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of follow in those footsteps and do that same thing. And at the time, I was still a big hockey player as well. So, being involved in organized sports was something of interest. So
that was like a big part of your life, playing hockey.
Yeah, I started when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And played pretty competitively up through the middle of high school.
Oh man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hockey's an interesting sport because of like the culture around it.
Yeah.
You could really immerse yourself with the hockey culture. And now that you being in Johnstown, that's kind of sick that the War Memorial's up there too.
I know, and I didn't put it together, and but I remember going to visit Johnstown when it came to like deciding whether or not I could or couldn't reoccupy this blacksmith shop, and I spent a lot of time in the Holiday Inn because I was visiting a lot. And the first time I went there and I went into the lobby, there was this huge picture of Paul Newman in his Charleston Chiefs jersey. And I was like, what the hell is that? And then I was like, oh, Slapshot was filmed in Johnstown. And so I called my dad. I was like, Dad, guess what?
Yeah, that's awesome. I've like one of my best friends, they've been playing in that Johnstown hockey tournament forever. And that's like their yearly, like, their pillar moment is like coming to Johnstown and playing in that tournament, and they love it.
Yeah.
But Slapshot, that's cool up there. That's a cool like little through line with it all.
Definitely.
Now, high school, whenever you're kind of figuring out that you're not going to pursue hockey, like where does your mindset go to, where you want to focus your career?
Well, I think it was kind of like, going to that school, like hockey was so serious. People would often get drafted. Well, not often, but it wasn't totally out of the picture for people to go right from my high school to the pros.
Yeah.
Skip college. And it was intense to play hockey there. And, to be quite honest, I actually never made varsity, but JV, could beat any varsity public school team in the country. So for me, it was still really competitive, but it almost was like too competitive, and it sort of turned me off on it a little bit. I was in great shape, and I loved teamwork and the camaraderie of being on a team and stuff like that. But man, it was so intense at times, and you had to reflect on like, is this, what you want to be doing with your life and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, that school also had a really strong art program. So I was taking advanced placement classes, and there was, 2D and mixed media sculpture and ceramics and things like that. So there was no shortage of that kind of stuff for me. And, that was more my vibe, I think, because we'd be able to go after class and work on your artwork was a little bit different than being like, yelled at by your coach.
Yeah. Yeah, it got to be intense to like be in one of those programs that is like, a top tier program. Like luckily for me, I played football my entire life growing up. At my high school, we didn't even win a game our senior year. I was captain of the football team, didn't even win a game our senior year. So it was kind of a chill vibe for the most part. But I couldn't imagine, like we had a high school that was in our conference called Thomas Jefferson that, was like a crazy, like high level, high competition school. A lot of people went to the NFL, and I just couldn't even imagine, being in that sort of like culture. I feel like it would be exhausting, almost like smother your spirit a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not like, if you don't have the full equation of just like, being a star athlete, you know what I mean? You have to work twice as hard to do all that. But so arts were like also a main focus during school?
Yeah, and so I did, took art classes and did athletics at the same time. And then I think it was my junior year, I made the decision to focus more on art than athletics, and I had to get, special permission. It wasn't hard to do, but, that's a really structured school. Mm-hmm. And so after classes, you had to do something, whether in most of it was athletic activities. And so, classes would end, you'd have a little bit of free time, and then your athletic activities would start, and then you'd come back for dinner, and then there was like study hall and stuff like that. And so I was able to opt out of athletics and go to the art studio when everybody else was practicing sports and stuff like that. But and so I didn't really get a hard time for doing that or anything, but had to make a special arrangement because it was a little bit out of the norm for what students at that school usually do.
Yeah,
but they were supportive. So
what was like your main focus? Like, what medium for art?
Honestly, it was drawing. Like, I would say drawing and painting, but I didn't really do too much painting. It was like still life drawing with charcoal and stuff like that, or like pencil, all the different H's and B's, and just super realistic.
Oh, cool.
Like still life stuff.
That's neat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you're in school and like you're coming to like graduate from there, it's like, what is the next move for you?
Well, I was able to put a portfolio together, which was nice. And then, this predates like a lot of technology. So, if I wanted anything digital, right, like work was actually on slides, and you'd have to send your slides to college to get reviewed by a committee or something like that. But I would also had a physical portfolio and would go to these college fairs that had art schools represented that I was interested. You'd take your portfolio and then show them to the representative from the college, and then they'd get you feedback and kind of give you criteria to go on for applications and stuff like that. And so then it was just a matter of like deciding or trying to make the best decision you can as a high school kid, which you have no idea what you want to do, like what school you want to go to or whatever. So I selected a few schools that I was interested in and applied, and that was it.
Now, whenever you were selecting these schools to go to, I mean, like, what was your like dream of what you wanted to do? Was it be a teacher?
I didn't know. I think at the time it was just be an artist.
Yeah.
Like, what is that really? We don't, it could be so much different stuff, but like, I think I was open to anything. I just knew I wanted to practice art.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you said you were choosing schools, like what schools caught your eye?
The two major schools that I was interested in was Alfred University, which is where I went, and then
where was that?
It's in Western New York.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember feeling really strongly about the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so I applied to others and got into others as well, but as my memory serves me, those were the two that I paid the most attention to, like went to visit and spend weekends and stuff like that before making the decision. So
you went to the one in Western New York?
I did, yeah.
And I mean, like, what is like, what's that really consist of? I mean, you go to that art school and like, you said, you just wanted to kind of be an artist, but like whenever you go to an art school like that, do you have to, I assume there's like general education sort of like trajectory, and then you kind of hone in on what you want to do?
Yeah, and so gen ed for that particular art school was super minimal, which was part of the attraction, because I was never a very good student. I was never like a terrible student either, but I struggled with formal learning environments and test taking and things like that. So like the idea of taking like collegiate level math classes and sciences and things like that wasn't really something I was interested in. Alfred in particular was a place where the gen ed requirements were super minimal. So I took like a Western civilization class, which is a history class, and I don't know if there was an English class or something, but mainly it was studio art and art history only.
Oh, that's cool. So you didn't have to like really waste your time, not waste your time, but like, go and focus on things that you weren't interested in.
Exactly. It turns out I use math all the time now, but at the time I didn't have to do it. Yeah. So it was really good fit for me.
So, I mean, as you're going through this school and you're kind of like figuring things out, like what kind of art are you doing there? Mainly still like drawing?
Well, freshman year, you don't get to pick your studio that you get to take. You just do what's called freshman foundations. And I always kind of referred to that as like art school boot camp. And it was very different than anything I had ever been exposed to before. And I think the premise of it was really to get you thinking, three-dimensionally and two-dimensionally, and really push you out of your comfort zone and stuff like that. So for the first year, you just did these crazy projects that in my mind I was like, what are we doing this? Like, I just want to draw pictures or something that like I can relate to, like actual art project rather than these crazy things. But I look back at it now and I'm super thankful for the experience and find it to be incredibly valuable as I've matured as an artist. So
these types of things that they were having you do was the goal of that to kind of like, broaden your horizon on different things rather than just the thing you were focusing on? Absolutely.
And I think it was this comfort zone thing. So like, and I remember the first project or the first thing really specifically, we went there and there's like hundreds of students that you don't know, and you got split up into random groups. And then you were challenged to take your big sketchbook and your charcoal and go out into the town and fill up your sketchbook and just make a bunch of drawings. And that was like, oh yeah, right on, I can do that. That's like something I understand and I can do, and it's tangible. And then the next day we get into class and they say, okay, now take your drawings and cut them all up and make a collaborative collage out of all your drawings. And so day one, you're out there like trying to draw as best you can. You're like, I'm gonna show everybody how good of an artist I am, and perspective and shading and all that shit. And then you're just to cut them up the next day, and you go, oh, all right, well, that's kind of weird. Then you make the collage, and then the following day you come in and there's just string, tape, and paper, and then you're to make a 3-dimensional representation of your collage.
Wow.
Right. And so I'd never done anything like that before, and that was like a good way to describe like what that program was like.
Yeah, it's heady. It sounds like it makes you kind of like get outside of like yourself and kind of get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
that's cool. Now I don't know if I would like be as receptive to it as like a 18-year-old, 19-year-old. I feel like like you said, you would be like what the hell am I doing? But that's cool now to think about things like that, because it's just exposure to new things and different ways of going about thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's attractive to me.
Me too. I think what it really did, that as I reflect on it, is teamwork, right? Or like working with strangers, making decisions, like doing things together is a skill set in and of itself. And that was a really strong way to kind of like introduce students to that. And then also this idea of not, putting your work like on a pedestal, pun intended, but this thing where ceramic teachers like make you smash your best pot so you don't get super attached to it.
Yeah.
Like cutting up your drawings was kind of like that same feeling. It was like you try to make the best drawing you can, and then you cut it up, and that's like character building, Yeah,
that's interesting to think about that now that you said that. I guess it kind of like, the attachment, like kind of, that's kind of fascinating to have you do stuff like that.
Yeah, it promotes growth, I think. So I was happy to do it, although it didn't feel like it at the time.
Now, at this point, like, do you have an interest in teaching?
No, not really. I don't think that thought ever really crossed my mind. I was still trying to like experiment and discover myself and what I was interested in at that point. So it's kind of funny to think about like college. You're supposed to decide what you want to do with your life, but I think at that time you quite honestly don't have any idea.
Yeah, you don't even know who you are. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just trying to figure out and feel comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
Now, as you move, is this a 4-year school?
4-year school, yeah.
Okay, so like as you move through, into your, second, third, and fourth year, are you able to like hone in on like the things that you're interested in after you, kind of, have these different experiences of different types of artwork?
Yep. Yeah. So second year, you got to pick 2 studios a semester. And so, that gave you the opportunity to try a bunch of different things and sign up for a bunch of different studios. And then third year, you focus on 2 studios and you have to take some electives. And then fourth year is your thesis year, and you just work on your thesis.
Now, for your, at this point, you have done no blacksmithing at all?
No, I remember there was like some forging equipment in the sculpture shop, but nobody there knew how to forge, and those tools and equipment were presented in a manner that was quite scary and intimidating. So we all stood clear of that.
Wow, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because I'm a power hammer smith, so my comfort zone is at the hammer. And my introduction to a power hammer was my undergrad professor turning one on, and I didn't even know what they were at the time, putting a 2x4 in there, smashing it all to hell, and going, "Don't get your hands in there." So nobody
I'm never
turned
going to
it on.
touch that.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
So your thesis, like, what was the art that you were doing for your thesis?
I was mainly making steel fabricated kinetic sculptures.
So you're working with, like, when does that come into play? Like, that interest to work with steel?
I took a sculpture class, which sculpture at Alfred was in the fab shop. And so it was fabrication and casting, but mainly metalwork. And so I took one of those workshops sophomore year. I got into a sculpture class.
And was that like your first exposure to working with metal?
100%. And it was terrifying. I remember looking over at my friend and joking around and going, "Let's get out of here and go to oil painting," because like talking about alternating current and direct current and welders and voltages and amperage, and I was like, what did we get ourselves into?
And that was your first experience with all that stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool though. Yeah. So, obviously you grew an attachment to that where you made that your focus your fourth year, right?
Yeah.
Now, whenever you finish your thesis and you're coming out of there, what's your next step?
What did I do after that? I think after that, I tried to get jobs with other metal workers, and I succeeded in getting one, outside in Connecticut, Washington, Connecticut, and it was with a glass blower and stainless steel artist, sculptor kind of guy, and so I got a job there, worked there for a couple of years, and then after that moved to Vermont. And and got a job at my first forging shop there. Okay, so
forgive me to like rewind back to this, but like you go through this this thesis year, and you're like focusing on this as like a metal sculptor. Like obviously you have to think about like what you're going to do with your career. You got to make money at some point. Right. So as an artist, it's kind of like gross to equate money with your art, but that's like a realistic thing you have to think about as an adult. So, coming out of school, your goal was to get a job being an artist working with metal, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so these jobs that you were getting out of there, whenever you said you were working at a place with a glass blower, it's like, what kind of stuff are you doing for them?
Fabricating their sculptures.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, what that looks like realistically is like, graduating from college and like crashing back at mom and dad's so I can have a home base to find a job for the next chapter in life, because I didn't get one right out of college. And so it was like researching and looking at tons of different sculptors, and then writing letters, making phone calls, taking rides, studio visits, with what I guess you could call like a resume at the time, which is nothing because you're just out of college, but hopefully one of these people needs help or like has enough paid work that they need help and wants to take a chance on a youngster who wants to become a metal worker. And so I found a couple of those, which was nice.
It's always so fascinating because like I've had the opportunity to have all these different artists come in here and like kind of hear how they settle into the path that they're pursuing,
right?
And it's so interesting to hear how they approach their career, in air quotes, because like we said, it's beautiful to be able to do your art in your garage and just like conceptualize something in your mind and execute it in there, but in all reality, it's like we all have bills to pay, things like that. So it's always such a fascinating thing to hear how people approach like how they're gonna essentially monetize, their passion. And it's a fascinating thing to like kind of hear how you can navigate that and kind of figure that out. Like you listened to the Studebaker Metals episode,
right?
And that guy like, kind of went through, not the same trajectory, but like, had an experience working with like, jewelry, and then like worked at like a museum making like, installations basically. And it's kind of fascinating to hear that. So, I mean, you coming out of there and trying to like, figure out your next move and like where you want to go. You said you moved to Vermont. Mm-hmm. Where did you settle whenever you were in Vermont?
I started in a town called Manchester, and that's in southern Vermont. And I moved out there for social reasons, and then wanted to look for a job once I got out there, kind of a thing. Like I didn't move out there for a job, so to speak. And then while I was out there was a lot of metal workers, a lot of artists, glass blowers. I was just trying to get involved in the creative community in some way, shape, or form. And
what year is this? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please, it's all good. This was probably 2005.
So, like, what's the community of like metalworking, at back then? Because I mean, I feel like now in 2025, we're living in a world now where like, the trades are like, stronger than ever, and like it's more accepted to, immerse yourself in the arts and focus on the arts as a career and everything like that. But in 2005, I feel like, I was in 9th grade, and I feel like that it was still like looked down upon to kind of pursue a trade or go to a trade school or anything like that. So what was like the environment in the community for like metalworking and things like that back then? Was there a lot of work in that?
No, maybe, but I wasn't really involved in the trades necessarily. Like, although I was welding and torch cutting and building stuff out of steel, I was focused like really heavily on the creative aspect of that. So like I was visiting sculptors and artists, not like welding shops and stuff like that. Not really like trade related kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that was kind of a gross comparison, but it's like even more. It's like more acceptable now for like to focus on the arts, mm-hmm. and like build a career off of the arts. But in like 2005, I feel like that was almost like looked down upon.
Yeah, but my parents were supportive, of course, but there was always that pressure of like financial stability, even as it relates to like health insurance and stuff like that. It's like I could, mow enough lawns, and work for sculptors here and there and like pay some bills and get by, but like how does that benefit your longevity and stuff like that? So there was always that kind of a thing. But I guess when I look back at that, I still feel like I was super young, and like career wasn't really a consideration because I didn't really know. There was no like formal trajectory for what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure it out, take it one day at a time, and make connections, and be a hard worker, and hopefully things will pan out.
Yeah, I love that. That's exciting. As a young person, that's exciting as a young person.
It was, and there was no, social media or barely internet back then and stuff. So it was really like grassrootsy kind of like, you've got to go meet people and look them in the eye and shake their hand and, be responsible and stuff like that. It was cool.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of like, I feel like that we don't think about that enough. I mean, like, and whenever I say we, it's like, I'm a little bit younger than you, and it's like that's always been a reality in my world to have that resource of like social media and being able to build community and connect online. Mm-hmm. But it's wild to think that was like there was a time whenever that wasn't an opportunity or there wasn't a resource to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you go out there, you end up getting a job, and then like how do you go from there?
Well, it's kind of funny because that, I did the same thing in Vermont that I did in Connecticut, which was like try to find every artist within 60 miles of where I was set up and meet them and see if they needed help or work or something like that. And through my research, I found a place called Hubbardton Forge, which was a production forging and fabrication shop that focused on making light fixtures like chandeliers, floor lamps, table lamps, but like decorative and sort of high end and not high end like super unaffordable, but like, you know, a well-established business that, you know, like I would be making lamps for like LL Bean, you know, so to speak. And so it was like, you know, it was like a job that had like a 401k and health benefits and stuff like that, but it was in the metalworking field. And at the time I had never forged anything. I was always just welding and fabricating. And so I applied for a job there in the welding department, and they didn't have any openings in the welding department, but they had one opening in the forge, and I needed work, right? So I kind of was like, didn't matter. And so I took the job, and that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because that was my introduction to forging. They sat me down at a power hammer day one, and that was my inception as a power hammer smith.
You're like, oh shit,
yeah,
2x4 moment.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, you approaching that, I mean, I'm sure you had like an interest in that, being in like the metal world, right?
Yeah, but it was foreign still. Like the concept of forging wasn't something I had a grasp on. I didn't quite get it. You know what I mean?
So what kind of stuff are you in forging while you're there? Like, how do you like what's like your jumping off point as far as like, you know, being a novice?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of stuff are you working on?
Yeah, so like the backbone of a lot of decorative forging is a taper, and so it's like a reduction, a cross section over a length, gradual reduction of cross section. And most of the products that this company made and sold like had a lot of tapered forms in them. If you think about like chandeliers and like wall sconces and stuff, they were all these bars that were hammered and tapered and then fabricated together. So I think for the most part, what I was working on a lot was tapering material at the power hammer. And then, you know, we had these hydraulic benders and diacro benders. So I was forming those forged parts into different shapes that then would get sent to the weld department to be like put together into a lamp and then finished.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
So did you gravitate towards that from the jump?
Yeah, I mean, immediately I saw that it was a much better place to work than the welding department. Like the welding department, that you just sat in a little booth with like you know, a shade 3 curtain around you, and parts just came in and out, and you would just TIG weld them together. And in the forge, I was processing the material from like raw bar stock into a certain cut length, you know, lighting the fires, selecting the hammer to forge on, and then bending it and punching holes. And so you're much more active and mobile in the forge. And then it was a little bit more of a community aspect to that department as well. It was less like solitary sort of feeling. And so, you know, you'd get a work order, right? So like I'd go in the morning, and it'd be like, well, you need to make all the parts for 50 of these lamps. And so then you start your process, and that starts off with cutting the material, you know, forging it, and then it might get a bunch of holes punched in it or some rings rolled or something like that. And there were people in the forging department that actually didn't care to forge very much, and they were like really proficient at like the iron workers and the benders and, you know, cold punching holes and stuff like that. So, you know, you can make friends with those people and then kind of trade off your work, right? So you come together and combine both your work orders, and you're like, all right, I'll do all the forge work for both of our orders, you do all the cold work, and then so that way you can kind of like cater your existence over there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's cool for sure.
Made friends that way and stuff like that, and it was pretty sweet.
And how long were you there?
2.5 years or so.
So in that time, are you being there, like, do you think that you like would you say that you got like a pretty good handle on like the forging process working there?
I got a good handle on the stuff that they forged.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
And so there was some like foundational and fundamental techniques that job really taught me, which I still use to this day quite a lot. And one, of course, is like working proficiently at a hammer, and then the other is like seeing your work. So after you forge 50 to 150 parts and then bend them and everything, you have to find the master off the wall and then match every part to the master. And off the benders and stuff like that, there's always a little bit of like inconsistency in the part, and you have to take it over to what we call the straightening table and like tune every part with a hand hammer and a little saddle swage and just get everything to match perfectly by hand. And that was like super valuable.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I still draw on that experience for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 2 years there, then, you know, at this point, do you have any interest in, does teaching come into your mind at all, or are you still just kind of like, you know, in the moment?
It started to 2 years there, and then I honestly had enough because it was kind of corporate, and I felt like there were a lot of people there that started off like I did, but their creativity got squashed over time, but they got trapped in a lifestyle where they couldn't just like walk away still.
Yeah.
And I could still walk away. And then at the time, I had met somebody who rented me a small barn that had some forging tools and stuff in there. So I had my own shop as well. And so after working at the production shop, I would go to my studio and work on creative things of like my design and stuff like that. And I would do that on the evenings and weekends. And so for about 2 years at the big company forge, I finally sort of had enough for lots of different reasons really. But I was like, I'm going to try to go out on my own and see if I can like source enough commission work to support myself out of my little shop. So I tried that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, are you, it's obviously different work than what you're doing at the corporate job, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, like, are you, you know, how do you approach that if you're kind of, because I feel like, you know, the way you described it is like, you know, you were executing, you know, almost the same type of work over and over again, you know, kind of for the most part. But, you know, whenever you're trying to get commission work, like, are you doing all sorts of different things?
Yeah, I mean, I was ignorant at the time, so I didn't really know what to do, and the only thing that I could think of was what I saw, which was architectural work, like handrails, gates, and like fireplace work. And I say those three because those are the three that I seem to get, you know, commissions for or whatever. But, you know, at that point in my career, I already knew how to do basic fabrication, like cutting, welding, grinding, and like putting things together from multiple pieces. And then with my 2 years of production forging under my belt, I felt like, you know, I could forge and fabricate things together well enough to get a job, build it, and install it. And obviously it was harder than I thought it was, but, you know, I had lived in Vermont, you know, for 2.5, 3 years at this point, trying to do that thing where you're getting plugged into the creative community. So I knew a lot of artists. I knew a lot of metal workers that like didn't need help because they didn't have enough work. So, you know, when I stopped working at the production forge and went out on my own, there was like, I didn't feel like I was, you know, solo or alone. There was like a little community, and I just kind of tried to get my name out there one way or another and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you know, go to the next chapter of your life from there, you know, you were just talking about, you know, kind of getting commission work and doing things and stepping out on your own.
Yeah.
It's like, where does it go after that?
Well, I did that for a while, and I lived in Vermont probably for a total of 8 years or more.
Okay, so you spent some years just like doing your own thing, you know, doing your own work.
Yeah, and it was great. It was really, really great. I mean, I did a lot of landscaping on the side because work was kind of hit or miss a lot, and I was young and ignorant. So, and Vermont was the kind of place, like my perception of it when I was there at the time, it was really hard to get established as a metal worker because all of the contractors and all of the clients, they already seemed to have somebody that was doing their metal work. So I was like searching for an in one way or another, but not really finding it. But quality of life was really good. You know, big fisherman. I was in a horseshoe league. Like, it was just great. You know, I had my own sculpture studio, and I was, you know, making ends meet one way or another. But I I did get a little sick of it. Like I knew I wanted more than just being a struggling architectural smith in Vermont. So that was sort of the inception of like, oh, maybe I should go to grad school. Like that seemed like a good opportunity to like force myself out of my comfort zone, get me out of Vermont and expose me to like bigger picture art, sculpture related things, you know?
So where'd you go to grad school?
Southern Illinois University in Carbondale.
And that was, you know, like whenever you go there, like what's your idea? You do just to kind of, you know, get yourself deeper in the arts?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I just needed like in Vermont, I was making a ton of sculpture. But after I made it, it just put it down in the corner.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't have relationship with galleries or, you know, places to expose myself to like the bigger art community to maybe try to get opportunities, you know, not even really knowing what they were, but like I knew that I was in this little Vermont bubble that wasn't like getting any bigger. You know, I just was there and it was like, well, is this the rest of my life or is there something else I can do? And so that was sort of when I thought like, well, if you don't know what to do, but you know you need a change, like maybe grad school is a good idea. And I didn't know where to go or what to do, but I was working, like doing some piecemeal work for a blacksmith in Grafton, Vermont. And somebody came to visit one day that said, you know, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale is the only school in the country to offer an MFA specifically for a blacksmith. And so once I heard that, it was like, well, that's where I want to go because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so made it a priority to apply and get into that school for sure.
And going there, is that a 4-year school?
3 year.
3 years.
Yep.
So, you know, whenever you go there, like what's like are you just kind of figuring out your next move really there?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I felt like 3 years was like a really good chunk of time to like settle down.
Yeah.
Right. And like, you know, think and reflect on yourself and learn. And a lot of that school was community driven and community building. So part of being enrolled in that program was like applying for shows, going to community forging events all over the Midwest and, you know, meeting lots of people, having conferences, inviting demonstrators. So I knew that I was going to get exposed to like the greater forging community by going to school there. And that was definitely a big part of that. But, you know, for 3 years, I was like, it was able to take a breath. You know what I mean? I'm going to be here for a while. I don't know what's after this, but I don't have to worry about that right now. I just need to focus on my sculpture.
And the school there, I mean, like, are they teaching you other fundamentals of like, you know, forging in a hole?
No, that school, well, I went to the grad program, right? So you're already expected to know how to forge.
Yeah.
And so my education there was more like professional development. So, you know, artist statements, applying for shows, writing letters of recommendation, reviewing applications, like things like that. And so I didn't really get formal forging education, but we did learn a ton from each other as grad students. So there was a lot of learning for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're just expanding your like more your professional end and how to approach, you know, elevating yourself into that, you know, next world.
Exposing yourself professionally, basically. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That has to be exciting to be able to like kind of get in that world, because I feel like, you know, you being you know, just like a worker, you know, someone who is just, you know, working to like, you know, to fund your life and then doing the creative outlet on the side, you know, that kind of like, you know, makes you step up to the line to be able to, you know, approach it from a different viewpoint where you could like, you know, turn it into something more. It got to be exciting to be able to do things like that.
Right, for sure.
So in that, while you're at school there, is teaching like, you know, in your mind?
Yeah, it crept in. Like my first class I taught was at the West Rutland Carving Studios in Vermont. So somewhere along the way in Vermont, I had thought about teaching. I don't know how it, became a thing or whatever, but I am interested in sharing a lot, so maybe it has something to do with that. But part of like the interest in going to grad school, and specifically in Carbondale, was if you get in, they waive your tuition, but you have to do an assistantship, and one of the assistantships was being a teacher. So the grad
cool.
students taught the undergrad forging classes.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, so an undergrad comes to Carbondale to do whatever they want to do. If they decide that they want to take the blacksmith classes there, introduction to forging is taught by the grad students.
Oh, that's neat. That's a neat little program.
It was great, right? And so that was my first introduction into formal education, and my first time like teaching somebody for a long period of time, and not just how to make a hook or a bottle opener or something like that, but coming up with a semester's worth of curriculum that dovetails from project to project, makes sense, and then finishes with like an end of the year or end of the semester sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it was awesome. I had never done anything like that before, so like was thrown into the lion's den educationally, but fortunately the older grad students would share their sort of like semester curriculum with you, and then you could tweak it to meet your needs and interests and stuff. So it was a nice community.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So after grad school, what's your plans?
Well, I didn't have any, and I knew that I could have access to the shop for the summer after I graduated, so I stuck around for that. Like at the time, it was the best shop I'd ever worked in, in my career. So like leaving it was stressful thought. But I found a Craigslist ad for a partner/manager needed for a metal shop in the lower Hudson Valley in New York at the end of the summer, and that was the Center for Metal Arts, and so I applied for that and got that job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Luckily.
Yeah. That's pretty sick. So at that point, like you said, originally the Center for Metal Arts was like, you guys were doing work like architectural work, handrails, gates and fireplaces mainly.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, so your approach to, being a employee and working and executing, commission jobs there, how do you kind of go about approaching to flip that to an educational sort of organization?
Well, because they already taught a couple classes a year, the infrastructure to teach to a certain degree was already in place. And so somebody who's passionate about education, it was very easy and encouraged for me to say like, hey, I want to teach a class this weekend in this shop, and put it out there to the world and see what happened. And I did that, and it got well attended, and so I just continued to do that. Architectural work, honestly, is not really my thing, and I've seen it squash a lot of people's love for the craft, and so I knew that I didn't really want to do that. So if you're struggling to find commission work in the lower Hudson Valley, which is really close to New York City, or you're finding it but it's not the kind of work you want to do, meaning the client would rather have it welded than riveted, but at the same time you're teaching these classes that people are like chomping at the bit to attend, and paying an enrollment fee, it was really easy and supported by the owner at the time to kind of like put some energy in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Education for forging at the time wasn't as popular or easily accessible as it is now. So it did really well for a couple years in the lower Hudson Valley at that shop.
What year is this?
This has got to be like 15 to 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're there 15 to 18 and you're kind of like, building up what it is eventually became now, how does it move from the Hudson Valley to Johnstown, PA?
Well, the short story, I guess, is that I saw a picture of the big historic power hammers on like a social media blacksmith group, and figured out where they were and called to to schedule a tour to see the shop. So seeing the picture, being a power hammer smith, these hammers are really big, really rare, really beautiful, and finding out that it was only like 4 hours and change from my shop in New York, I just called the Historical Society to have a look. I just said, can I see the shop? That's that kind of a thing. So,
yeah, I'm super passionate, dude. Can I just come and look around?
Yeah. But I think, they gave tours of that facility. Like Johnstown's really proud of that shop, and that's why it's been saved and stuff. So it wasn't like, it was kind of routine for them to get a call like that. I didn't say like, oh, I'm a power hammer blacksmith who runs a, forging school in New York State. I just said, hey, my name's Pat. I'd love to see the shop. Can you?
Yeah, you just came from it as like an enthusiast end of it all.
Yeah.
So I mean that's cool because you're doing this in the lower Hudson Valley, and you're it's business as usual there. You're running the school there kind of, but then you come here and you just check it out. And like, what's like the history of the shop that you guys are in now with Johnstown?
Well, that the forge shop, the one that attracted me to Johnstown and that I originally went to see is an industrial forging shop that was main purpose was to service the Johnstown steel industry. So that was like a tool making shop for a steel mill, basically.
And what year did that open up?
There's some speculation, but late 1850s, early 1860s.
And that hammer that you were talking about specifically that you saw, around what year was that from?
That hammer that I saw was the one in the back of the shop, the double arch, and that hammer was from 1890.
That one's the one that's not running right now, right?
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, and you said 1890. That's pretty crazy. So you go there and you check out all these hammers and like, these, warehouses, the grounds basically for what now is Center for Metal Arts.
Right.
And how does that turn into from being a regular tour to now being the home for Center of Metal Arts?
Well, during the tour, the historian said, and it's so serendipitous because he didn't know what I did, but he was talking about the future of the shop because he's the one that saved it from demolition from Bethlehem Steel and raised Save America's Treasures grant to invest $1 million into stabilizing it. So it was invested in the future of that shop, and had the foresight to like want it to be a functional shop again. So that's sort of step one, right? Is like the person who owns it or oversees it or has some sort of say in its future wants it to see it reused. And so he said, I'd love to see this shop get reopened by a not-for-profit blacksmith organization that runs workshops and artist residencies.
And you're like, all right, well, that's it. I'm here.
Yeah, I said, that's exactly what I do in New York. And he said, do you want to move your school here and reopen the shop? And I said, yeah.
Wow. And how do you bring that information back to it's not the same owner now, right? Or is it?
Well, the Historical Society didn't own it, but they had a lot of say in its reuse. But the Johnstown Redevelopment Authority was the property.
No, I'm talking about the center where it was.
Oh, right. Sorry. So I went back there like basically on pins and needles because I really wanted this opportunity, but didn't quite know how to make it a reality yet.
Yeah.
So,
were you the director out there at that point?
I was like the shop manager.
Okay.
Right. So, I was still getting pressure to get commission work and, financially keep the business stable. But there was a lot of sort of history to that shop with the previous owners and stuff that was making it, a little bit difficult or whatever. And so, when I came to work there in the lower Hudson Valley, I thought this is a great, spot for me to settle down. The shop was big. I like living close to New York City, but also being out in the rural environment, and the school was kind of doing well. And so I had sort of like a handshake agreement with the owner that, she hired me thinking she wanted to pass on the business to somebody else.
Okay.
So I came there with all intents and purposes to own the business at some point. But what that meant was buy the building and the equipment off of her. And then I knew right away after visiting Johnstown that this was a much better place grow a legitimate forging school than in New York, despite its proximity to New York City. So I had to figure out a way to make that happen, but I didn't want to tell anybody because, you know, I didn't want to lose the shop in Johnstown, and I didn't want to like make the current owner nervous that I wasn't going to like come through with my end of the deal and stuff like that. So making that a reality took a lot of creativity and support from people that have helped me along the way. You know, gracefully exit that facility without upsetting the previous owner, and moving into the Johnstown facility without, you know, making it publicly known that space was just sitting there available to whoever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you go and you take this creative way to make that happen. And, you know, like how big is the center at that point whenever it's in the lower Hudson Valley? Like how many people were involved there?
Well, it was the owner, myself. I had 2 employees that were helping me, and that was it.
Okay, yeah. So it wasn't like a crazy big business with a bunch of different people up there.
No, it was small.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you making that transition from Lower Hudson Valley to Johnstown now, I mean, like, what does that look like to like bring a school to a different place that's, you know, 4 hours away?
It's like, you know, how are you going to make that work, dude? And it was difficult, but I knew I had to raise money, and I knew I had to you know, have a business plan and a strategic plan for moving and getting up and running in a new location. And
did the owners see the opportunity that was there though? Like, were they kind of on board from the beginning?
You know, I didn't tell the owner that I was moving to Johnstown.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't tell until it was a reality, right? Because I know in life it's like I'm not going to put up the sign or make the announcement until it's real.
Yeah.
You know, and so it wasn't real for a long time. I was working on making it real, you know, but also I was juggling, you know, structuring the move and running the business in the lower Hudson Valley at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, I knew that becoming a not-for-profit 501c3 was kind of crucial to getting rid of commission work altogether and becoming a full-time school. And so I was doing that regardless of if I was going to move or not. And I had met and been introduced to foundations that I knew were supportive of craft education, and had said, you know, if you become a 501c3, we encourage you to apply for a grant from us and stuff like that. So like that was the trajectory regardless of the move. But, you know, I spent a year sort of running the business and structuring the move at the same time, you know, and then when it became a reality was when I sort of let everybody know what I was up to.
Yeah.
But that was like, you know, lease signed, like I'm doing this no matter what kind of a thing.
Was that, were they receptive to that?
Kind of. I mean, you know, there were two price points for, you know, the old business. One was the building and one was the equipment. And so I was able to give the previous owner exactly what they wanted for all the equipment, but I didn't want to buy the building anymore, of course. And so I think that, you know, that probably wasn't the news they wanted to hear, but fortunately, you know, 45 minutes outside of New York City, like real estate, you know, so they were able to sell the building, get what they wanted anyway. So it's, you know, it's all water under the bridge at this point. Nobody got screwed. Yeah. Put it that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's like, it had to be a scary sort of, you know, year and a half for you to like you said, you're kind of juggling, like running that business and still like setting up the foundation to, you know, make this big move and create this like, you know, new chapter at this place.
10 months.
10 months.
10 months from stepping foot in that shop for the first time to running our first workshop there.
That's pretty insane.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I bet. Probably went nuts that 10 months.
Yeah, I did. did.
So, I mean, like, you coming over to Johnstown and, like, you know, creating that space, you know, I had an opportunity to come up there and see it a couple of weeks ago and participate in my first experience with any sort of, like, forging workshop that you do up there. And, you know, I came across you because of Dan from Commonwealth Press. I saw that he was getting these really cool commemorative coins made that he was selling through his Commonwealth Press website. I inquired about where these were from because they were super cool. He said that, you know, you are doing, you know, some incredible stuff up there, which made me, you know, what I do with the podcast is I look for incredible people doing incredible things. Found you, and, you know, you invited me up to do this workshop, and it was like such a, like, I was blown away by it up there. I really was for what it was, because I, being someone who's never had any experience with any sort of, like, you know, forging or anything like that, but also being a creative type of person that, you know, likes to do things, I thought it was such like an approachable and welcoming environment for my first experience with all this stuff. And it kind of like blew me away what you have up there and what you guys are doing, and being able to be up there with the opportunity to see one of these, you know, old school power hammers being in operation where you guys were doing the anvil research, just made me, you know, go nuts kind of thinking about all this stuff, because it was such like a cool opportunity, because, you know, I have all these different people on here and all these different you know, creatives and these business owners, people that run restaurants, people that do this and that. This is kind of like a unique sort of, you know, story to hear. And you know, you being in Johnstown, you know, like, what is like how did you approach kind of taking over the reins of all this and like kind of making it work?
It was, you know, just one day at a time, I guess. I mean, I have a very clear vision and mission, and you know, just kind of going day by day and growing, you know, organically, and not trying to force anything, but just being true to the vision and true to forging education and historic preservation, and kind of, you know, playing the cards I get dealt, and hoping that the community supports what's going on. And I appreciate what you said about, you know, feeling welcome and accessible and things like that, because, you know, that's a big part of what we do is getting people involved in the craft who've never done it before, as well as people who might want to make a career out of it. So just creating like educational programming and curriculum that covers the whole range of people who are interested in giving it a shot.
Yeah. From beginner to, you know, people that want to, you know, really make their life about this.
Yeah, exactly.
So you offer that wide variety and range to all different types of people. Now, I mean, like, for you being someone that's like, you know, been in this industry now for, you know, many, many years, you know, how important is it for you to make that part of your focus, to have like the initiative to want to get new people involved with it? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, if you have people that are already passionate about it, who've already, you know, had experience of it, that's one thing. You know, to have them involved and want them to take, you know, more classes to further their career. But like, you offer these, like, you know, these beginner type classes for people that never experienced anything like this. You know, was that like something that was like important for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's important for me personally, and it's also important for the longevity and the sustainable future and the quality of the future of the craft, you know, is getting people introduced to it and getting them off on the right foot, you know, understanding the tools and techniques really well, and getting familiar with the tools and the fire and all that kind of stuff. And it's even like, you know, if you just want to do it for a hobby, that's great, you know, and there's a program for that, many programs for that. And if you want to be a professional, that's great too. And it's really important for us to make sure that we cover all the bases, to try to, you know, make it as accessible and approachable to quite literally everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, students, full-time school is dependent on students. And so we want to make our programs as broad and diverse as possible so that we can attract people from, all areas, walks of life, and interest levels.
Yeah, that I guess that would make sense from a business model as well, too, right?
Yeah.
Now, it was cool because, being up there for that weekend, this workshop that I took for this knife making workshop, it was a weekend course ran by Jeff to make this knife, Jeff Fader Knives, and he, came in, and he's someone that, like, you guys... So the way that you run this is like you bring in other people, right?
Lots of times. I teach a lot of classes myself as well, but we have a really rich visiting instructor program. Yep.
And how was that always something that was implemented in the Lower Hudson Valley chapter of this school, or was this something that like you kind of had an undertaking in doing yourself?
Well, yeah, it started in the Lower Hudson Valley. I mean, for the most part, I taught everything. We didn't have really a budget to, recruit and pay visiting instructors or housing to house them and all that kind of stuff. And so I taught most of the stuff in the Lower Hudson Valley, and then had occasionally brought in like a master smith to teach a different topic that I wasn't, proficient in. But moving to Johnstown and becoming a full-on school and, creating student housing and all that kind of stuff is what really allowed me to, start to invite a lot of different people to come here and teach and everything. And so fortunately, I think, the classroom, the forging classroom is of a nature where people like to teach there as well. So recruiting instructors wasn't too terribly difficult, but it was necessary for a lot of reasons, specifically like offering the amount of classes I wanted to offer without giving myself burnout, but also diversifying the classes that we offer, because I'm not, proficient in every single process of forging, right? So, having visiting instructors allows us to teach like colonial work as well as contemporary sculpture, as well as tool making, so your program can really encapsulate all the different outlets for the forging process, no matter what your interests are.
Yeah, like learning that you guys do that and you bring in all these other people to, teach these classes was such like an interesting part of it all, because obviously, if you taught all these classes, that's great that you would do that, but it's cool to hear that like more people are involved with it, which brings in more, fresh ideas, fresh, just any sort of freshness to all of it, a breath of fresh air with creativity, everything like that. Now, another thing, in regards to, my time that I got to spend up there that weekend is, you guys had this hammer going, and you got me to come up there that weekend because that's like a unique experience, because you don't have that up and running often.
Right.
Now, the reason that you guys get this hammer running, like what were you doing? Like kind of explain what you guys were doing up there that weekend.
Well, a lot of what we do, and a big part of our mission in our location in Johnstown is the restoration and reuse of the historic blacksmith shop there, industrial blacksmith shop. And so one of the major undertakings that we've done recently is the research and tool making behind forging anvils. And so when you were there, we were forging parts of anvils that are mimicked after Johnstown anvil pattern.
And why were you guys doing that?
Because a big part of my passion is historical research and preservation, and like historical preservation, to me, it doesn't stop after you fix a hammer. It's also preserving the craft as it was practiced of the time frame when that hammer was operational. So, you can fix the hammer and preserve it, but then what? Like, to me, then you have to use it and preserve, the practice around running that hammer. But forging anvils is something that I've been really interested in ever since I learned that they were forged, which was many, many years ago. And so being really fortunate to have reoccupied and restoring a shop in America that has the size hammers to actually successfully execute these forgings, it became a big part of my my research and preservation efforts once we fixed the hammers.
And because nowadays, from my time, what I've learned up there is most anvils are cast now, correct?
Yeah, lots of new anvils are cast, or they're drop forged or something like that. And most, blacksmiths are using old anvils, so the secondary market for anvils is quite big. So when you're getting involved in the craft, it's a lot easier. Well, it was a lot easier to find an older anvil to use than a new one, but new ones are getting manufactured these days, but mostly they're being cast. Yep.
Yeah, so it's cool, and it's probably, as someone who's, as passionate as you are about the craft, it's probably awesome to be able to do that within the building that you guys are making happen up there, to be able to kind of pay homage to the craft and do it the way that it was done originally.
Yeah, it is, and it's like, that shop is so historically significant for a lot of different reasons. And if you're interested in anvils, it's also historically significant for that. And that's why, a lot of the, I moved there to run those big hammers, but I immediately became interested in the preservation of the history and the heritage of the city and its processes that relate to the steel making industry. And so, left over in that shop are heaps of original tooling that date all the way back to the mid 1800s until 1992, and within that collection of tooling were 6 or 7 bridge anvils, as they're called, which are, they weigh up to 700 pounds, and they're these large anvils with forged legs that get bolted directly to the ground. So when I felt like myself and whoever was helping at CMA was ready to embark on a pretty serious forging, I had been studying those bridge anvils and sort of broke them down into a series of simple steps, and felt like, well, I think, given the experience I have on these hammers over the past 4 years or so, I think I'm ready to give it a shot. And so that was the inception around trying to make an anvil.
Yeah, and you, this whole conversation we've had, you've spoke a lot about preserving the history of it all. So for people that might not be aware of it, can you give a brief summary of Johnstown's impact on the history of the steel industry?
Yeah, I can try.
Yeah.
So that steel mill was really influential and important for the discovery of the technology and the processes it takes to make steel on a large scale in America. So we know as the Bessemer process and stuff like that was all sort of developed at the same time it was in the UK over in Johnstown. That sort of technology is what allowed us to make steel on a large scale and of a higher quality control, which, made the Johnstown steel industry sort of boom really big, because at that time we were able to make steel rails, which outlasted iron rails by a lot. And so, rail production was a big part of the Johnstown steel industry. And then, they also invented the 3-high rolling mill in Johnstown, which allowed you to roll shapes back and forth through the rollers without having to bring it all the way around and feed it through in the same direction. So, the productivity increased quite a lot with the invention of that, and then it just became this really influential steel mill, and was operational from the mid 1850s until 1992.
Pretty good. That's a pretty good summary.
Okay, good.
Did a pretty good summary.
I was like, what do I hit on? What do I leave out, and all that kind of stuff.
You didn't have to touch on everything, but I feel like there's a lot of people that listen to this who might not be as aware, as I wasn't. I always knew Johnstown, but I never really understood the impact that it had on the industry in a whole, and what it did for the the industry in a whole. It's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to be up there and be standing in the octagon where these hammers are, it's just like a powerful moment to like be there, and like, you know, there's history there. And I don't know, whenever I was younger, I just never really cared about history. I never really cared about school or like formal education, and it didn't pique my interest. But now as an adult, I like, you know, I'm so into like learning about these things on like a deeper level, just because of like, you know, the power that it had, and like it's literally what things were, you know, history started there. It's just crazy to think about that, and it got to be awesome for you to be able to go to work there every day and just, you know, want to just keep building and keep, you know, improving and making things just to pay homage to the craft.
Yeah, it's really special, and I don't take any one singular day there for granted, because it's you know, being the steward of all those tools and equipment, it's like very important to me that, you know, I do them the justice they're deserved, because, you know, from the 1850s until 1992, they've really served American industry quite well and deserve a lot of credit for American industrialism. And now here I come, and you know, they were, you know, that shop and those hammers were dormant from 1992 until 2018, and it's up to me to do the justice they deserve, and I'm doing my best, and I think a pretty good job at it. But being a not-for-profit educational institution has been really helpful for those kind of goals and missions, because, you know, philanthropy, grant writing, fundraising, like all that kind of stuff, it really allows you to, you know, pay homage to the hammer and do it the justice it deserves when you're fixing it, and not have to cut corners because you just need it for a profit-driven job. You know,
Yeah.
if your mission is historic preservation and education, then, you know, the money you raise and the money you make goes towards proper restoration, not profit-driven restoration.
Yeah,
You know?
and I thought another thing about it up there is like, while you were doing this anvil research and using these like historic hammers, you know, you're telling me that there's people traveling down to volunteer their time because of how, you know, impactful, you know, these things are, like this is, you know, people coming from Connecticut and everything, just to come down and share time to help improve and help, you know, just pay homage to what it is. It's pretty incredible. It's like from an outsider's point of view, I mean, obviously you guys are all, you know, close to the main focus because you're all enthusiasts about it, but like as an outsider's point of view, to see these people come in and want to just be a part of it and want to be in part of, like, you know, revisiting this historical end of it all, it's just I don't know, it's a powerful thing to see.
Yeah, and it's I'm incredibly lucky, and that speaks really well to like the rarity of the shop and the rarity of the equipment. It is the draw that it has from people from all over the world to work there. Like we had an instructor from Tasmania and people from Canada and all kinds of different places, because shops like that, like quite literally almost don't exist anymore, and the ones that do exist primarily are doing work for, you know, the defense industry or government contracts and stuff like that, because we still need industrial forging as a society, but you know, a lot of that stuff doesn't get done in America anymore, and then the infrastructure to do so is almost all but lost, and that's what makes this shop so special, is that it's been preserved. And then our mission, you know, as well as, you know, historic preservation and education, is also creativity.
Yeah.
And you know, the artist blacksmith community is really growing, and it's really special, and it's really an awesome community to be a part of. And there's people that are really pushing the boundaries of what forge work can do from a creative standpoint. And you know, access to power hammers is a really important part of being a modern smith. And so, you know, coming to Johnstown in 2018 and restoring these hammers, you know, and our mission is to make them available to other artists and craftspeople, as well as the staff and CMA community, because you know, the way the community is growing is like there's these great people out there making wonderful work, but don't have access to hammers this big. So, CMA is becoming a community space that can attract and support people who have interest in making large-scale creative forge work.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, you're doing your justice trying to explain all this. It could get deep.
Yeah, it can.
With what it is.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, one of the other things that I asked you up there that kind of blew my mind is like whenever you came into the new Johnstown CMA or CFA,
CMA.
Yeah, CMA. Yeah, I was right first time. I asked about like the rehab of these hammers because they were, like you said, dormant for kind of a while.
Right.
It's like, how do you go about that?
One piece at a time, like Johnny Cash said, But it's quite seriously, it's like that, and when you get there, and you start to do a little research, it was easy to identify the last hammer that was in operation and know that hammer was in the best condition. So it was easy to identify the first candidate for restoration. And, the first one was sort of a passion project by myself. And at the time, my shop partner, Dan Neville, and our two interns, Aaron and Anna, and we just kind of, on our free times, evenings and weekends, we just went there and just started taking it apart, assessing the condition, putting it back together. And they're incredibly simple machines, so it's easy to tell if something's amiss or something's broken. And there's only two moving parts, so if those parts move, it feels like it's ready to go. And so then, getting an air source and plumbing the air to it, and then just sort of like taking it slow and one step at a time, and just being safe obviously is another important concern, of course. And then just starting small and getting big.
Starting small and getting big. Love it.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are ripping up there with classes. You got all sorts of people coming in and doing these things. Whenever me and the rest of the people in my workshop were stepping out, you had another artist coming in doing this incredible pizza cutter workshop, which I was jealous about. But it's just, you're buzzing up there for sure.
Right.
What are the goals of the Center for Metal Arts?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of them, right? So I kind of pick and choose what's more important for the program development and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's to create a community space that's sort of a destination educational program for people interested in forging, and then just increase the use of the historic hammers in the octagon space and make them available for other people interested in learning about forging at that level.
Awesome stuff. Really, really is. Is there things that you think that I missed about the center at all?
I don't know. I think it was pretty good.
Thorough? You think I was thorough?
Yes,
I think we got into a good bit.
Thorough.
I think we got into a good bit of it all, but I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I didn't really touch on. It's like we talked about all the different artists that you bring in for that teach the classes.
Yeah.
We talk about the research that you're doing up there. We talked about the history itself of Johnstown and the center and where it is now. But really what it is now is just getting more people involved into the school and getting more people enrolled in the classes and exposed to what you're doing up there, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the main ways that I work on getting people involved is our scholarship program, which I'm incredibly proud of. And so every year we award over $150,000 of scholarships. So I'm trying to make all of our programs as accessible as possible to the broadest possible audience, and to me the most effective way to do that is to minimize or get rid of the financial impact of participation. And so I'm growing the scholarship program and making from beginner through advanced workshops scholarship funded is a way that we can really attract and draw a whole variety of people from backgrounds and locations and things like that. So I like to mention that as a big part of initiatives that I work on and stuff like that.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
So if people are interested in learning more about this, like what's the best way to go about learning about, the scholarship opportunities and more just like, what you guys are doing up there and the opportunities for anyone from beginner to, advanced learning?
Right. Yeah. I mean, our website obviously is a really good source, and that's centerformetalarts.org, and you can follow us on Instagram. Although I wonder how effective that is anymore these days. But, there's also like picking up the phone and giving us a call, stopping by. But, everything is on the website, and I try to make it as easy to navigate as possible. I'm not a web developer or anything like that, but I think it's all pretty straightforward. But if there's questions or whatever, we're always available to answer questions and help. And from my perspective, there's opportunity for everybody, no matter what. So if you want to get involved, you want to learn the craft, you want to come to our conference, take a class or whatever, like it's all there, and we're always available to help in any way we can, for sure.
Yeah, and for people that are listening or watching this, like me, as someone who is, you guys are probably listening to me talk on this podcast ad nauseum now, but I have had no experience with forging whatsoever, and I went up there to the center one weekend, and I participated in a weekend class, and it was, it was very, very approachable.
Yeah.
You guys did a great job with, Jeff and you. It was just like, I was super nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I was absolutely sick about it whenever I got there, and they were like, "Is anyone not done any sort of forging?" And I was the only one that raised my hand.
Really?
Everyone else had experience in it, and I'm like, "Oh shit! I hope I don't completely destroy this knife that I'm trying to build, because all these other people have had experience in it." But it was just so cool to be able to kind of step into that world with the resources of having an accomplished knife maker like Jeff there. And it was just approachable, and it was it was a fun time to be able to do that, and to be able to go up there and kind of step out of one world and into one that was completely different. And I think it's awesome that you guys offer stuff for complete beginners to these immersive courses that last 6 weeks for people that have been passionate about it for years and want to make it a career.
Yeah, Jeff made you feel good, right?
I thought Jeff was a fantastic dude. I really did. I had a wonderful time with him, and I think he was a great teacher. He really was, just there for when he needed it. He made it a fun environment. It wasn't stuffy,
right?
And that's I feel like that. I think that we spoke about it before, but some blacksmiths that might be, high level, accomplished blacksmiths that are, incredibly talented, I don't know if it always necessarily transfers into being able to teach it.
Dude, that's a totally different skill set, teaching. Some of the best blacksmiths might not be the best teachers, and vice versa. And it's, so my craft is finding the ones who have a foot in both doors. And then for me, it's like what you mentioned, this environment of feeling welcome there is super important, and no egos, no pretensions, everybody's welcome no matter what. And that's kind of the main focus of our weekend workshops. We want to give everybody a strong understanding of the fundamentals of the craft, but really you're there to have fun.
Yeah,
right. That's a huge part of it. So if you're not having fun, then who cares, right? So these weekend workshops, 1 day, 2 day kind of stuff, you get a great overview of a lot of tools and techniques and things like that, but ultimately you're just there to have fun.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to that's why I keep going back and harping on that. It's I've had no experience in this, so I was very nervous to come up there and kind of step into that world, because I just never done anything like that. And it's nerve-wracking for me to even kind of think about that, because I'm am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to understand this this work and how it is? But for people that are listening that might that might be interested in something like this, but might be hesitant to, do something like this, there's no hesitation needed for this. It's like you guys do a great job at making it approachable for people of all walks of life.
Yeah, and it's, I'm in the business of forging education, absolutely, but I'm also in the hospitality business, and when you come there, you have to be comfortable, you have to feel good, you have to have fun, and then that's what it has to be like in the shop, but also in the housing, right? So if you're traveling to CMA from somewhere and you want to take a weekend workshop or a 1 week workshop, we also have housing available, which is a short walk from the shop, and part of coming to CMA is welcoming and comfort, and that we try to make that the top priority for both the shop and the residency.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wonderful time. It really was a wonderful time for me. For being someone who's collected knives since a young age at flea markets and throughout, to be able to make one was super, super fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing else you think I forget?
No, I think it was good. I mean, it's great. It was a lot about my background, which I didn't expect, but that was fun to talk about. So
yeah, I feel like that people sometimes, they come in here and it's almost kind of therapeutic to like kind of go back into your life, because you spend so much time, just kind of in this to get to where you are today. You don't really have an opportunity to go back and kind of, reflect on your journey.
Right.
And I think that that's really what the podcast is about. It's like people's journeys to get to where they are. And the fact that I'd say 99% of the people that I've had in here, I mean, they didn't grow up wanting to be what they're doing now, whether they're chefs or park rangers or funeral directors. No one grows up and no one's a child and it's like, oh, I want to be a funeral director.
Right.
So it's like, how do you get to that point? How do you get to A to B?
Right.
And for you to have to hear about your background in art, to how that transfers into you being someone that wants to teach, and how that all comes together to ultimately what the Center for Metal Arts is now. It's fascinating to hear about. It really is. I had a wonderful time up there, and it's fascinating to learn about, and I think a lot of other people will be fascinated by it too.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, thanks for having me and asking questions and everything. I hope I did a good job.
Did a great job. We're not done yet. We got to do the ending segment. All right. So ending segment that I do with everyone is an ending segment called Desert Island Questions.
I've been dreading it for so long.
Have you?
Yeah.
Come on. Everyone says that. They're like, I listen to these episodes and I think about this, but I still don't know. But okay, so Desert Island Questions, whenever I give each guest 3 categories to take with them on a desert island and use until they starve to death and die. First category is movies. So you got to pick movies. 3 movies to take with you on a desert island.
I can't, man.
You don't have 3 movies?
Can I bring
You can bring
sitcoms,
series, movies. You could bring whole, compendiums of movies, whatever you want.
Well, I guess if I had to select, I was thinking about this and I couldn't think of a lot of different things, but I think this one movie that I'm interested in having is an Andy Goldsworthy movie called Rising Tides, and he's like a nature artist kind of thing, but there's just a lot of beautiful footage of different scenes of nature, and some of his work is nature dependent, like on tides and the way rivers move and things like that. And so it always made me feel calm, and it was beautiful, and I felt like scenery that's not a desert island might be valuable at certain times if you're stuck there. So I thought that would be pretty good.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
It probably would bring maybe the complete Simpsons series. Okay. From start to finish, it's not finished yet, but even past season 11, just to have content.
Yeah, that's a good answer too. You have more than enough.
Yeah, and I mean, I could watch seasons 1 through 8 over and over and over again and never get bored of them. And then third one, movie, I don't know, one of those nature documentaries. I just think like having a change of visual stimulation of the environment you're in would be really helpful. So like one of those David Attenborough kind of.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah. That's a good way to think about your choice, because any movie, I feel like any regular movie you watch probably would be, you probably get bored of it, but like a documentary type thing like that gives you a different picture.
It could just be on in the background, right? Like, I mean, instinctually, right, I want to be like Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
Right? But like, as great of a movie as that is, how many times can you watch it on a desert island? Probably thousands, but you're on a desert island.
Eventually it'll get bored.
Right.
Okay, if you had to pick a book, like one or two books that you like.
I got a good one for this, I think.
Okay.
Because I'm not like a huge reader. I'm like an audiobook kind of guy, but but I'm a craft person, right? So I need to like be building things.
Yeah.
And so my thoughts on this are that I would bring a book that teaches origami and has like a bunch of projects.
That's pretty cool.
And then I would bring the biggest book ever written so that I could use all that paper to make the projects.
Ah, I like that. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good way of thinking about that.
Because I think I'd have to be busy creating something, and so I feel like, what are you going to do while you're watching your Andy Goldsworthy movie is you got to be making your origami things.
Yeah, people always ask me, and I was going through all these books that I have in this Tupperware container out there, and I bought this book from Barnes & Noble years ago. It was like a Marine... it was like a survival guide for the Marines, and it was like, it's like 4 inches thick, but it has like all sorts of weird shit, basket weaving, traps, everything like that. And something like that would be cool. I think that I settled on that for one of my picks.
Nice.
Having things like that, because I feel like I would want something to like, be able to start building and like,
totally.
Yeah, keep my mind occupied.
I mean, it's in my mind's eye, this island is nothing but sand.
Yeah, so that's interesting too. I guess it's like whatever you think about what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a good point.
If you're on like the island from Lost,
yeah,
then you can like have materials to build.
See, that's what I think about. But that's interesting that you say that, because it's like almost like the cartoony version where it's like one palm tree
and a little hump of sand. I'm like, man, I'm going to be super bored.
Okay, so third category is 3 CDs.
So I think the first one that's on my list is Live Dead, which is live recording from 1969. Was kind of like the holy grail for me as a kid, and it's pretty, it has a lot in it. It has really kind of like spacey, spiritual sort of stuff and rock and roll, and it's the kind of thing that I could listen to over and over again. I also really appreciate it for what it kind of represents as far as American rock and roll and the time period in which it was recorded and stuff like that. So I feel like that's a pretty strong candidate for me.
I've been getting into the Dead a little bit.
I know you have.
My most recent one was the 1972 live. The cover is the phone booth one.
Yeah.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I get into it a little bit.
Yep. That's a good... Yeah, there's a lot, I really like it. I grew up listening to it, of course, with the older brother and stuff like that, but I like it a lot because you can research it. Like, I like to deep dive into shit.
Yeah.
And so, like, having every recording ever made available to be listened to, it's like something that you can really dive into and listen to a lot. So I'm pretty into it.
Okay. He said, so I'm pretty into it.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's that.
What about another one?
Well, I had on there the Talking Heads' Remain in Light, which is a really great album. I'm trying to pick things that are like really influential albums from when I was a kid or like coming of age.
Yeah.
But I also, want to pick stuff that, is it's like a body of work in its entirety, right? So I see that album as that, and it has lots of different genres that it draws from. You can like be on that little sand pile dancing, you can be chilling. There's like, it'll take you on a little journey, which I think is super helpful and important.
That's good.
So I think that one too. And then third one, I think probably because I was just at the symphony last night, but I would want some sort of like symphonic collection, classic sort of stuff, like, which Tchaikovsky or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good pick that has been chosen on here a lot. Is like some sort of classical selection of all sorts of things.
Yeah,
which definitely makes sense. That would be good. Okay, just curious, what's the first CD you ever bought?
Oh, well, shit, I don't really remember. I remember the first tape.
What's the first tape?
Well, I had to steal it from my brother, Appetite for Destruction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to ask people that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best show you ever been to? Concert? Curious.
Well, I hesitate to say this, but I go to a lot of Fish concerts, so one of those probably. But we did see, Aaron and I saw David Byrne recently do his American Utopia on Broadway, which was really incredible.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
It's definitely one of the best concerts I've ever seen, for sure.
Interesting. Okay, third to last question is the Death Row meal. So, Death Row meal, I know you're interesting with your choices on food.
Yeah,
You're particular.
No sauces, no condiments.
What would your Death Row meal be? Appetizer, main course, and a dessert?
Shit. It would be, I guess it would have to be a steak, you know, with some sort of potato, appetizer, I don't know. I kind of want some cheese in there, maybe, so like a mozzarella stick or...
It's the most chosen on here.
Is it really?
I swear to God. I feel like it's so wild that ended up being the most chosen thing. Out of 300 people, I guarantee you that's been picked the most out of everything.
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. I love a mozzarella stick.
Yeah. That's
a good answer.
Yeah, I think so. And, I'm going to die, right? So we're not going to have any vegetables, right?
No vegetables. Yeah. What about a dessert?
Ice cream.
Ice cream?
Yeah, coffee with Heath Bar.
Okay. Yeah, you knew exactly what you wanted there.
Yeah.
Okay, second to last question. You get ready to go on a road trip. You go into a gas station. What's your snack of choice?
Well, yeah, so candy, definitely candy. Like
what kind?
Gummies and shit, like all kinds of...
Gummy guy.
Yeah, or like high chews or, something like that.
Okay, those are good answers. Last question is, if you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one. No family, right?
No family, yeah. If you could forego a loved one.
Wow, I don't know. I guess I'll be super cliche here and say Jerry Garcia.
I don't know if anyone's ever picked him on here.
Yeah.
Of the many deadheads that I've had on here.
I'm glad I'm not alone in that respect. But
yeah, that would be an interesting one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sit down, have a little conversation with him.
Or other dead related person that I would like to meet is Owsley Stanley or Bear.
Who are these people?
He was their sound man for a long time, but he also was like their personal acid chemist.
Oh, cool.
And
that would be a sick one.
Yeah, he lived a pretty crazy life, and just to talk to that guy, he was like,
Any like books on him?
Yeah, there's a really good book. I just finished it, his biography.
What's that called?
I think it's just called Bear, like the story of a psychedelic life or something.
Oh, wow.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I got to get on that.
Yeah,
that would be cool to read about. Okay. Yeah, man. I think that was I think that this was a swell conversation.
Good. Me too.
Yeah, this was I'm happy that you guys came down on a trip and were able to make this happen.
Yep.
Appreciate your hospitality, inviting me up to the center. And I hope people listen to this and want to get up there and take a class.
Me too.
Absolutely. Before we go, take a second and promote the center, where people could find it, website, Instagram, all that.
Do you mind if I say a thing about our fundraiser?
I would love for you to tell me anything you'd want to tell me.
Cool. Well, centerformetalarts.org, at Center for Metal Arts on Instagram. We have a mailing list, of course, so that's great ways to know what's going on and get involved. But recently we just launched our first public fundraiser to help raise the money to restore the third historic industrial power hammer. And fortunately, it's a matching grant. So if we raise $50,000, the foundation will write us a $50,000 check.
Oh, wow.
And so $100,000 is the budget that I've created to restore the third power hammer in the Octagon building. But there's a lot of incentives incentives as well for donation, which is really good. And we're already up to like $20,000. So this thing has legs.
Yeah.
And so if you're passionate about, history, historic preservation, or, steel history in Western Pennsylvania, and you appreciate the work that we're doing to restore these hammers, any amount helps. And I mean, trust me, dude, I struggle to like ask for money.
Yeah.
But I think this is for a good cause, and it's really going to go a long way, especially with the match. So
yeah, absolutely. That's cool that there's a match of that amount.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's good. All right, dude. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to come and talk to me about it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the hospitality. I love it here, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I always appreciate bringing people into my world a little bit after I get an opportunity to be in theirs.
Yeah.
Everyone else that's listening, appreciate yins as usual. Each and every week, we're back with another great guest doing great things for the city. Thank you for listening. Call you right back. There you go.
Nice, dude. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Me too.